Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of me reacting to Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. We are up to chapters 23 and 24, if my count is not mistaken at this point in time. So, in chapter 23 we start off with Shalon and her crew kind of executing their plan to get into the Ghostblood's lair. So what I liked about this chapter is that we immediately see Shalon kind of use her new little armor, and it's low intelligence apparently, because if it were of higher intelligence it would kind of spring the trap that is at the door, so the black scent trap that is over there at the door. And so they're basically kind of trying to steal the mask off of this woman who's guarding the door by having her armor's friend kind of immobilize her and keep her kind of silent so that, you know, they can steal her stuff. So I liked that execution of the plan. I like the fact that we see her immediately using this armor to her own advantage. They've kind of prepared for what is to come, but they have not fully taken into account recent changes, so it is still possible that she might be kind of discovered while she's inside. So that is a little bit, you know, like that can still be challenging. And I think it is also within this section that we once again have this reference to this woman being an off-worlder, but the off-worlders kind of looking like the Shin people, which it's been mentioned a few times, so it makes me think, like, are all of the Shin people kind of descendants of somebody who originally came from Scadrial, perhaps? But so in this section between Shalon and her crew, I don't actually think that there is anything else of note that happened there. And then we kind of move over to Navani, who is in conversations with different of the High Lords, kind of managing the daily running of the place. And so we kind of meet up here with, I've forgotten his name already, I just read it, but Sebarial or something like that, I think, right? Is the High Prince that Shalon kind of like pretended to, like, if she like made her way into the capital underneath the wings of this household, right? And so Sebarial, who's now a high prince and in charge of like commerce, is kind of like grumpy about the fact that, you know, he's gotten legits and that he kind of hoped that this position would be able to give him like a fortune, but that, you know, there's barely any money to go around, and kind of like figuring out like how they could potentially like stabilize their income and stuff like that. And then High Prince Eladar is mainly talking about the kind of grumblings, I guess, to some extent, going on between the Light Eyes and the Dark Eyes. You know, we've mainly seen this from the perspective of the Dark Eyes, you know, Dark Eyes being resentful towards Light Eyes for the way that they've been treated throughout, you know, like the past centuries, potentially. And so now that the tides are kind of turning and that there are a lot of like past Dark Eyes who have gone into high positions and turned into Light Eyes, this has kind of compromised the whole view of what a Light Eyes is, and the whole sort of like idea of the tradition and of like, you know, like handing down your status to the next generation, and like kind of introducing this concept of your worth being something that can give you a high position. So potentially something that will come further into play, maybe not this book, but maybe like in the next in the second era, let's say, of Stormlight Archive. Maybe sort of like disgruntlements about social positions will kind of fester even more if we evolve this world a few more centuries. And then we kind of see her developing a little bit on a design for Spren, kind of figuring out like how to, instead of just sort of like capturing Spren and holding them against their will, kind of figuring out ways in which they can kind of potentially entice Spren to stick around, kind of make a sort of like symbiotic relationship with the lesser Spren, in order for them to, you know, like have a beautiful relationship of give and take, you know, there they give whatever the sprint wants. In the case of the fire sprint, that seems to be a name and some sort of like compliments and stuff like that, and in exchange the fire sprint would then just like stick around and would not like kind of try to disappear the first second that they have available, and thus we would get into a relationship between the sprint and the humans that is much more epical and long-lasting as well. And then in the second chapter we have a chapter fully dedicated to Zets, and it is a flashback chapter, which surprised me. I was like not expecting it, and we see him at the age of 11 as he is with his sister, and he's performing a sort of like wind dance to please the rocks. So a weird sort of little sequence, but a first sort of like an indication of his early relationship with the wind, but also you know, a scene that can kind of potentially come back at one point in time. You know, like many of the people in the comments, this makes me think like, okay, maybe Kaladin can whistle him a tune at one point and he can dance to it. Maybe that's like a sort of like symbiosis moment that's going to, or an apotheosis moment that's going to come at some point within this book, because, you know, the handing over of this flute that with it probably wasn't all that innocent. Probably there's a reason why he gave Kaladin a flute, and so this could be potentially a nice way to tie into that later within the book. And so we see Zets performing this little dance. There are some conversations there about blades and about the academy that is on this island, of like people preparing for the coming of the Voidbringers by training people. And so this makes us think that they probably have some sort of like blades around, and there's apparently some speculation about the fact that maybe all the missing sort of like honor blades, or at least shard blades, are actually being kept in Shinovar, and that they've been using it for a while to train the people there. And yeah, but aside from that chapter, I don't really know, because it kind of ends with him realizing that like a new rock has appeared and not knowing like how that happened. So it kind of leaves us like with a little bit of a teaser, right? Like, is this the rock that Zets will carry around with him forever? And like, if so, where did this rock come from? What is the significance of it like all of a sudden appearing within that scene? So yeah, those are my thoughts on these two chapters, and yeah, let me just get into the next little section. I don't really have too much to tackle with this section, but let's just keep it short and snappy as a consequence. But so yeah, with that I'm gonna leave you guys, see you guys for the next one. Bye!